Welcome to another program of Counterpoint. As former Vice President and now President-elect, Biden waits to become the 46th President of the United States come January 2020, and Senator Kamala Harris, officially the first woman, the first Black, and the first South Asian American to be Vice President of the United States, we ask Iranian thought leaders and strategists to examine the impact of this U.S. presidential elections on Iran internally and assess a possible shift in U.S. priorities on the dynamics of Iran and the Islamic Republic. How will this impact Iran's state of economy, its democracy activists, as well as Iran presidential elections of June 2021? Joining me today are Dr. Mohsen Sazegara of the Iran Transitional Council, which has been formed by the main pro-democracy Iranian political groups. Dr. Sazegara served as a founder of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps and ran in 2001 elections for the President of the Islamic Republic, but was later disqualified by the Guardian Council. Dr. Shahriar Rahi, a political thought leader and strategist about social and political climate in Iran, has broad experience in political development from Eastern Europe to the Islamic world. Dr. الهیارکنگرلو is the Director of Physics and Engineering Group at MRI Research Center at Columbia University, and Dr. Hassan Mansour, economist, author, scholar, and professor of economics at American Graduate School of Business and Economics in Paris. Dr. Kangarloo, I turn my attention to you first, and we kick off the program with you. My first question is, what is your take from the U.S. elections and the results of how?
There are certain aspects of this election that people can watch from the news media coverage of the election, which is extensively covered everywhere around the world, especially in the United States. But what I'd like to get to is really the historic conditions that brought us to this place. A famous American writer, Louis Bourgain, has a book called The Journey Around My Room. There's a big statement in that book that I like very much. It says the mystery that surrounds every journey has to do with the conditions that brings us to the starting point of that journey. I want to know what brought us to this point to begin with. Right now, as the election stands, there is a neck-to-neck competition between President Trump and Vice President Biden. And that by itself is a big story. I think it's more important than how many states are voting, how many, are uncounted, and how many are to be counted in the next 2-3 days. And there are some of them, the 6 remaining states. The ballots are so contested that most probably we are going to go through a recount of, if not all of them, at least 6 of the states. And probably the result of the elections will take until the end of the next week. So that's not really as important as what conditions gave rise to a phenomenon called Donald Trump. Donald Trump, unlike what people say, and the friends and foes of Donald Trump, I don't think is the cause of the polarization in America. I think he's the consequence of polarization in America, and the polarization has been ongoing for at least 40 years, so far as I can see it. I think there are certain conditions, certain global conditions, economic conditions, and social changes that we are seeing in Europe, we can see in Southeast Asia, in China, and in the United States. And those changes ultimately gave rise to the phenomenon of Donald Trump. I would like to pay attention more to that. I think that the conflict between nationalism and globalism as 2 phenomena that are really dominant in the world politics and in the economy are in the loggerhead. And I think regardless of who comes to power, who becomes the next president of the United States, the conflict between globalism and nationalism is not going to go away. Even if Vice President Biden becomes President-elect Biden and rules over America and the world, for that matter, for the next 4 years, I think that he inherits some of the legacies of Donald Trump, and he's just bound to live with them. I don't think he can easily lift all the sanctions against Iran. I don't think he can easily restore relationship with China. I don't think he can easily reestablish his friendship with Europe the way it used to be. I don't think America can do business as usual with Europe or with the rest of the world. And I don't think he can be kind to the Islam, to the political Islam, the way that Barack Obama was. So I think what we are going to see in the future, in the next 4 years, if Biden becomes president, we are going to see a Biden very different from the Biden who was the vice president of Barack Obama. And we're going to see a whole new Biden. And I don't think there is any room for the Islamic Republic to celebrate the rise of Joe Biden to the presidency of the United States.
Dr. Sazegara, Dr. Kangarloo mentioned the Islamic Republic and the reactions there. We heard from Mr. Rouhani's kind of welcoming the supposed results, and even Mr. Rafsanjani's son, who a former president of the Islamic Republic, who died under mysterious circumstances, welcomed the supposed results. Now, what are your thoughts, and what is your take from the assessment within the strategic thinkers of the Islamic Republic?
When we are talking about Iran, we should notice that the people like Rouhani, so-called president, or the others are nobody in such a subject. That's the leader of Iran who makes decision, and he has already ordered the High Council of National Security of Iran to consider negotiation with the United States. As far as I know, based on my own sources, they have arranged a task force in Foreign Ministry of Iran already, and they have studied about negotiation, a new negotiation with the United States, and they have studied both candidates, even President Trump. So now that it shows that maybe Biden will be the next president of the US, then they get ready to go for negotiation. The main motivation of the leader of Iran for new negotiations with the United States is getting money. Iran has around something minus plus 5-10 billion. Iran has about $70 billion reserves. And the leader of Iran needs money, not for the people of Iran. He needs money to support the terrorist organizations in that region. Now in Lebanon, Hezbollah, in Houthis in Yemen, Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq, in Afghanistan, some branches of Taliban, and even in Venezuela, he needs at least $10 billion. So he's in a hurry to, by any means, open the banking sanctions for Iran and get the money to spend in the terrorist organizations that he has arranged from Kabul to Caracas.
Dr. Ahi, Dr. Sazegara mentioned, Iran's proxies and supporters in the region. Certainly, those were one of the areas that the maximum pressure policy of President Trump focused on. Now that President Biden, former Vice President Biden might be taking office, he has already mentioned, called the maximum pressure policy a failure, and has said that U.S. under his administration will change course. But this is the same administration, if the votes are counted and as expected, he is at the White House, who will have the first female vice president, whose obviously the messages and the signals that it sends to women everywhere is important. So how do you assess these conflicting signals on the street in Iran? How will they be affected?
Well, there are several questions wrapped in that. First, on whether the maximum pressure policy has worked. If you measure it against the Obama administration's goal, then it failed, because they were focused single-mindedly on the nuclear issue. And of course, it set back the distance Iran has with building a nuclear weapon under the Obama administration, and that distance shrank under the Trump administration. But that wasn't the goal of the Trump administration. Trump administration saw the problem with the Islamic Republic as its behavior outside its borders, what it does in the Arab world, from the shores of the Mediterranean to the gates of India in Afghanistan to Yemen, the Horn of Africa. By that measure, the maximum pressure policy has certainly worked, because Iran's ability to do mischief in that wide region has been reduced. You would never see the demonstrations of the people of Iraq, people of Lebanon, against the interference of the Islamic Republic under the Obama administration. The big question is, to what extent a future prospective Biden administration sets aside Iran's behavior outside its borders and solely focuses on the nuclear issue. In which case, of course, you're going to fatten the guards. They're going to get more money. They're going to have a free hand as the backbone of the largest terror network of human trafficking, drug trafficking, destabilizations throughout the region. They're going to get stronger. And in that sense, it will be an overall policy failure. But we don't know. We really don't know how the Biden administration, and I go along with Dr. KayhanLife's assessment that we are living in a world with new conditions. And this is not a copycat of an Obama administration, the only president of the United States in history whose father, whose stepfather were Muslims, and he felt he can do an opening and understanding with the Islamic world, and didn't really distinguish that much between what you call Islamists and a moderate Islam that could live with the Western democracies. I think the silver lining in the Biden administration, though, will be that the liberal democracies of the world will be acting together rather than separately under Trump nationalism. And this is very important for the future of the competition between liberal democracies of the world and Eastern authoritarianism. The final point about Kamala Harris, I think she is absolutely a welcome for women's rights. She is very serious about human rights. She's shown that. But whether her foreign policy will be one of realism or idealism or ideological, we really don't know, because she doesn't have a foreign policy track record, but we hope for the best.
Dr. Mansour, both Dr. Ahi and Dr. Sazagara mentioned about the financial injection, help that would be welcomed in the Islamic Republic, and also, but will that really change the economic situation that Iran is facing right now?
Well, all three panelists have mentioned some very valuable points. Allow me to start with confirming the Iranian reserves, that according to our estimate and valuation, Iran has between $70 to $80 billion blocked in foreign lands. There's no point about this. There's no question about it that the system in Iran is in a stranglehold. So they need money. But money what for? That's a secondary question. There is no doubt that any easing from American administration side is going to provide a lifeline for the regime. There's no doubt about it. And great many people in Iran may feel frustrated about it. But would this easing, would this lifeline remedy any of Iran's economic structural problems? Unfortunately, my answer is no. Because let me give you some examples. About 80% of national economy is under state control. You just imagine that even if it were one of the most efficient states in the world, again, the economy would have been crippled under state control. Add to the fact that the government is very inefficient and ridden by corruption. So 80% of finances appear in government budget. And this, of course, contradicts with the people who are very formalistic and narrow-minded, looking at the statistics, because government always lies to organizations, international organizations, about its finances. It reports that only 20-25% of Iranian economy is under the state. While you look at the general budget, it's about 80 to 82% under the government. Secondary question. Would it remedy the about 40 to 50% of national economy under the control of the top clergy and revolutionary foundations? No. Third question, would it remedy the endemic corruption in the system and the veins of the system? No, it would not. Fourth, would it improve anything on the quality of the ideological management and crony management of the system? Because according to any international measurement and standard, the top management, top leadership are the most inept and inefficient in Iran and corruption ridden. Would it affect it? No. So the point is, yes, lifeline, yes, but improvement in people's fortunes, no. So the finances, the secondary and the final point is, how would this finance be spent? Would it affect Iranian lives and their fortunes? The answer is unfortunately no, only to the extent that they are afraid of the street revolts. Otherwise, the rest of them will be dedicated to areas where the system feels pressurized now, because they do have very stringent commitments towards their proxies in the world.
Dr. Kangarloo, what should we expect from President Trump if he is going to leave the White House in the next 2 months? Do you think he would be in a position to make situation, the confrontation with Iran, more acute, or actually on the contrary, he would be the president who would start, the negotiations again, or a grand bargain with Iran? You are muted. You are muted, Dr. Kangarloo.
If President Trump is re-elected, I think what we've seen in the last 40 years will be the business as usual. And I think he's going to be a little bit more aggressive towards Iran, not in a confrontational and in a military term, but in exacting more concessions from Islamic Republic than it has ever been possible in the past. In an article on Thursday, I believe, in Jerusalem Post, a minister of settlement in Israel, a fellow by the name of Zegni Hanegbi, has been quoted as saying that if Biden gets back to JCPOA and accommodate the Islamic Republic, there will be war between Iran and Israel. So, which I actually share that line of logic. I think one of the reasons why Israel felt so comfortable in the region was because of the unconditional support that President Trump afforded Israel. And actually, he managed what some of the previous 7-8 presidents haven't been able to do. and that was the establishment of diplomatic ties between some Arab states, between some Islamic states and Israel. And that really induces some sense of security in Israel, and that really settles the issue of, it actually helps to settle the issue of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. So some of the policies that President Trump has done, I know that by the opponents have been reflected and have been projected as having, confrontational and militaristic solution to all the problems. But I think President Trump is one of the few presidents in the last 30, 40 years who hasn't really initiated a war, and he actively worked very hard to help withdraw all the troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. So a strong America really goes a long way to send a very strong message to all the dictators, from Putin to Xi Jinping to Ayatollah Khamenei and to Maduro, so that they will really take note of America's resolution in protecting the America's interests and the peace around the world. I think if President-elect Biden, if that title comes to pass, takes office on January 20th, I think it would be wise to continue on strengthening the America's position in Europe, in the Middle East, and around the world. The four of the most important issues, in my view, that the next president, whoever he is, he has to tackle it, is number one is relationship with China. I know we are more concerned in the relationship between US and Iran than we are between the US and China, but US-China relationship is so important that really outshadows the relationship between the United States and any other country, because including some of the best allies, some of the greatest allies like Europe. So the decoupling, the economic decoupling, is the number one issue that has been ongoing during presidency of Donald Trump, that I don't think any president, regardless of who is in the office for how long, I don't think they would be able to stop the process of economic decoupling. That's something that really is important for the national security of the United States, the economic well-being of the United States, and cannot be stopped and should not be stopped. The number two issue, I think, which any president will follow suit in the next 4 years, is the relationship with Europe and the US role, specifically the economic role, budgetary role in NATO. The fact that the NATO countries, the NATO members, for the last 70 years, they have been negligent in making their fair share of contribution to the annual budget of NATO, and basically left the United States to pick up the bill. And this President Trump, came along, and he put all the European countries on notice that if they don't pay their fair share, United States is simply going to withdraw, and they're going to be left out in the cold to deal with Russia. The second issue was economic issue in our own neighborhood, the NAFTA that President Biden and actually going way back to President Clinton, they have been negotiating, and eventually they signed an agreement between Canada and Mexico and the United States. And President Trump came along, and he renegotiated NAFTA to the interest of the United States. I think the interest of the United States in all the regional and international pacts have been better served by the President Trump.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Ahi, Dr. Kangarloo mentioned other priorities that President Biden, if President Biden enters the White House, will have, including the economy, also the health. And this is at a time that in the Middle East, we are seeing the Abraham Accords, we are seeing a rapprochement, a re-engagement, a flourishing of relations between Israel, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and other Persian Gulf states. Do you really think that if, there will be a President Biden, there will be war? And if he enters another JCPOA?
No, I don't think so. Another more senior Israeli minister responded to the statement that Dr. Kangarloo mentioned, and said he didn't think so. We have a different set of problems. Look, Dr. Kangarloo is absolutely correct that the presidency of Donald Trump was a consequence of a change in the world, in the global order. Rise of nationalism is not unique to the United States. You've seen it in UKIP, in the UK, in Brexit, in Hungary, in Poland, in Salvini in Italy. I mean, it's not just, and there are fundamental reasons for it. There's polarization, there's anxiety because of changes in the world, but it's not the solution. Increasingly, we see that the major problems faced by humanity are global in nature and require global solutions. They cannot be resolved at nationalistic levels. Look at COVID. Look at the environmental issues. Here I go along with Yuval Harari, who asked himself the same question. If the problems are increasingly global, how come there's a rise of nationalism? And you know what he said? He said, well, it's sort of like you're lost trying to get to a destination, you've lost the address. What do? You go back to the last place you knew where you were. Not that that place is any closer to the solution, to the destination. That's a confusion that we must overcome. And in this particular context, I think that the Biden administration would do a lot better than a Trump administration. It'll also do much better in bringing the Western alliance together, despite the problems that correctly Dr. KayhanLife mentioned about Europe not paying its fair share. There are solutions to that. But the solution is not for the United States to act entirely separately from liberal democracies, from Western democracies, because that would be to the advantage of Eastern authoritarianism, and that does not bode well for the future of humanity.
Dr. Soros-Garro, we have heard that the outcome of the U.S. presidential elections will have a bearing on the upcoming elections for the president in Iran. You yourself ran for president under the Islamic Republic. What are your thoughts? Will there be a significant impact on what goes on inside Iran?
I don't think so. Based on my own experience, as you mentioned, because as you know, in Iran, there is a Council of Guardians that they ratify any candidate. And Council of Guardians check the list with the leader. He is the guy that make decision who can run and who can't run. In my case, in 2001, he didn't let me run, although on those days, two powerful top officials of Iran, Ali Akbar Natiq Nouri and Ali Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, I didn't know in those days. Later, I found out that they have talked to the leader and urged him to approve me, Mohsen Sazegara, as a candidate. But at last he said, no, he can't run. I mean, in Iran, we don't have a real election. We have a pseudo election. We have, this is the leader who handpicks the candidates and then say to the people, okay, go and vote. And sometimes that even in such a pseudo election, people vote to somebody else, like 2009, they cheat and announce Ahmadinejad as the winner instead of Mousavi. So, I mean, next election in Iran, or better to say selection in Iran, doesn't relate to what happens in the US so much. As far as I know right now, Khamenei and his son Mojtaba are studying a list of 12 people that one of them will be the next president. Their ideal is a person around 50, 52 years old, younger than Mojtaba, his son, and have a background of technocracy, some PhD, something that they can say, Dr. Who, somebody, and not famous as a corrupted person. This is their preliminary conditions to pick one of them. I guess that based on action of next president in the United States, maybe the next president in Iran will be chosen by Khamenei and his son, will be somebody like Saeed Mohammad, the head of Khatam al-Anbiya corporation under Revolutionary Guard, or somebody like Ali Bagheri, who is international deputy of judiciary power. One of them has a background of IRGC, the other one has the background of Imam Sadiq University, which is actually, and worked with Saeed Jalili in JCPOA negotiations. I mean, at most, the difference will be something between these two guys, these two typical guys. The others are just, you know, to, as they call it in Iran, to warm up the election. For instance, maybe they pick Masumeh Ebtekar as a woman for the first time to run, to encourage the women of Iran to come to the scene and show that, okay, we have a woman candidate. But
even though she's a former hostage taker?
Yeah, but they don't let her to become the final president, head of the government. He has worked, you know, she's corrupted. She and her husband are very corrupted, and she has worked with Minister of Intelligence for several years. So she might be, it's not finalized yet. It's too early in Iran to talk about the next June and who will be the president. But as far as I know, there will be something like that in next election. And the final person, the head of the executive power in Iran, will be somebody that they should make sure that obeys Mujtaba, son of Khamenei, who is working on succession, and they want to control the government more than now.
Dr. Mansour, even let's say everything is going extremely well for the Islamic Republic and its rule. Do you think they will be able to sign the FATF, join, you know, the good governance, anti-terrorism bill, anti-money laundering? Will they be able to do that? Well, to restart business? Yes, even though, let's say, all the sanctions are taken away, but still they have to join FATF, the anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism, you know, convention. Will they be able to do that?
Well, there's some very important points have been made by the other panelists. I would like to touch on them, but anyway, I'll concentrate on the answer to your question. No, the question with FATF is the definition of terrorism. The Islamic Republic, as it is, would not abide or would not comply with the definition accepted by the United Nations or the civilized world, because they want to have the freedom to define who the terrorist is, and in which case they will exclude all the major terrorists defined by the international organizations like Hezbollah. That's one. Second, as to the money laundering, studies within Iran by the monetary and banking experts have shown that about 40 to 45% of Iranian liquidity is corrupt liquidity. It comes from smuggling of narcotics, smuggling of human bodies, human parts, smuggling of women, or untaxed money. So this amount, which is about half the liquidity in Iran, is illegal, or what we call dirty money. If you accept money laundering, your monetary system collapses. That's why they cannot do it. So these two conditions are not going to be met. Even the others, the other two articles of supporting, say, or going with the definition of human smuggling and the smuggling or trade with refugees and so on and so forth. They have their problems in those areas as well. But these two are the major points which preponderate. They would not be able to give in. Whoever comes to power, even if the governments, in order to avoid all this banking blockage, they've tried to. Zarif has tried to. Rouhani has tried to implement, to get it accepted and implement the FATF rules. But the system in itself would not give way because they have some very strong reasons. So
Dr.
that's about it. But anyway,
yes.
the rest of it I leave, and if there's time, I'll make some commentaries on those.
Well, we're coming to a close, and so I just wanted to ask each and one of you, what are the things you will be looking forward in the next couple of months? What are the markers, and how do you see trends taking place, charting their course in the weeks coming? Dr. Ahi, I'll start with you.
I think the most important thing I'd look for is the extent to which the Islamic Republic would navigate the horns of a dilemma, assuming that you have a President Biden, assuming that negotiations start. This will run counter to the need by an aging totalitarian system to consolidate its, ideologically consolidate its top. Because a certain amount of power, attention, media focus will go towards those people who'd be in charge of negotiations with the United States. People like Mr. Zarif, if not necessarily Mr. Zarif himself. People like Mr. Rouhani. And this is a bête noire. This is a very negative thing for the type of person that correctly Dr. Sazagara was saying may be the future president, that comes from a very ideological background, that wants to keep the ideological cement of the regime, that would belong to Mujtaba Khamenei camp, for example, because they have major conflicts of interest. They have major differences in worldview. And that is lethal for a system that has lost the support of 90% of the people and needs to have absolute unity of command up there, no cracks in the system. So that is what I'll watch. The requirements of negotiation in order to get more money that they desperately need, and the requirements of the unity at the top.
Dr. Kangarloo, what will you be expecting from the Trump administration and President Trump in the next 2 months?
Yogi Berra is known to have said that prediction is hard, especially about the future. I predict that I'll venture a few guesses about what's going to happen in the next 2 months and during the transition, and then the next 4 years if Joe Biden gets elected as the next president of the United States. I think the transition is going to go smoothly. I think ultimately, if the 6 states that the election is still ongoing, the counting of the ballots is still ongoing, if they come on the side of Biden and there is an overwhelming victory for Biden, I think President Trump is going to admit the results. But something that we have to bear in mind is that we are still talking about a situation in which, at the end of the day, when the dust settles, President Trump has received 70 million votes from the citizens of this country, while President Biden, President-elect Biden, if it comes to pass, has received 74 million. So this was the widest participation of the Americans in any presidential election. Historically, it's a very significant one. So Napoleon has said that the revolutionaries launched the revolutions, and informed citizens guard the achievements of revolutionaries. So Americans show that they're informed citizens, and they're guarding the achievements of the founding fathers very jealously. And that's the biggest victory. So in that regard, I think everybody wins, regardless of who they supported in the election. And I think if Biden comes to become the president of the United States, I think we're going to see an entirely different Biden. I think we're going to see Biden who is going to, and this is something wise to do. Not that I know Biden and I have heard from him that he would say that or he would do that. I think it's wise for him to build on the achievements of President Trump in every camp on the major foreign policy issues, in relationship with China, in relationship with Europe, in relationship with the Islamic world, and in the relationship in the local neighborhood with the neighbors, with the Canada and Mexico. I think he's going to do that. I don't think he's going to throw away everything that President Trump has done, especially the gain he has made in the Middle East, establishment of peace between the Arab states and Israel, and isolating the Islamic Republic. I think isolation of the Islamic Republic is something that the Democratic Party has to really take advantage of, because the brunt of the work has already been done by President Trump. And I think that's what's going to be the major policy issues that President-elect Biden will follow in the next 4 years.
Dr. Salzagaro, and you, for the next 2 months, what are the markers that you expect to follow?
First of all, I wish that next 2 months will be, the United States will be safe and secure, first of all, and we have no street clashes in this country, and everything, I hope that goes on the track of the legal and the legal actions by President Trump and his team. But what I can talk is, at the side of Iran, I know that they are very mad and they are very afraid of last 2 weeks actions of the United States, when Elliot Abrams announced that they are going to put the sanctions under the title of supporting financial support of terrorism, based on IRGC at the center of that. As we know, President Trump, with an executive order, announced IRGC, whole IRGC, as a terrorist organization. And this is a smart act, because IRGC is everywhere in the economy of Iran. And if during next 2 months, Trump administration put the sanctions under this title and relates all the sanctions, maximum pressure, to terrorism, then it will be really difficult for next president to remove them. I know that the regime of Iran is very concerned about that, and they are watching that very carefully, and they are afraid of this action.
Dr. Mansour, we come back to you, and you will have the last word. What are the markers that you will be charting for the next 2 months?
Well, again, pending the results of American elections, which is not confirmed yet, what the probable is that Mr. Biden will become the president-elect. Well, in that case, they will start to engage. Apart from all the horse trading, which is very, very common in Iranian politics, they've already organized and they've taken steps to engage in negotiations. And the main object of the negotiation, as previously mentioned, would be to liquidate the impediments of the flow of funds. That's the most important thing. They would like to get access to money, because now they are really strangled. They need money. But again, how much of the effect of this money will be felt in Iran is the secondary question. So we don't know what, but we know that they're going to be, but the first thing is psychological. The most important for the system in Iran is psychological. They will boast to the people that we won and you, the people, lost, in order to frustrate people more. But my thinking goes that people will learn a very bitter lesson, that you cannot pin your hopes on a foreign president to push to the corner your adversary. You've got to resolve yourself. So in the short run, people may feel frustrated, but in the medium term, they will find that the source of strength are themselves, and they've got to activate themselves.
Well, on that note, on people power, I thank you all for accepting our invitation, for being part of Counterpoint this week. And to you, our viewers and listeners, thank you once again for joining us. And I hope to see you again soon on another episode.